Before this gets buried, smash subscribe, hit like, and leave a comment if you can handle the truth, because once you step inside this story, there's no turning back. The men who couldn't be contained. The sirens didn't stop when the gate slammed shut. They screamed through the fog like wounded animals, red and blue lights washing over the concrete walls of Pelican Bay State Prison. It was 3:17 a.m. when officers found the body. No blood trail, no struggle, just a man lying stiff on the cold floor of an isolation tier reserved for inmates too dangerous to exist anywhere else. His name was Marcus Hale, 39 years old, serving life without parole, labeled by the California Department of Corrections as administratively irredeemable. The kind of inmate guards were trained never to turn their backs on. And yet, he was dead. Hale's cell door was still locked. The cameras hadn't gone dark. The guards on duty swore nothing unusual had happened. No alarms, no fights, no screams. In a prison designed to watch every breath a man takes, Marcus Hale had somehow died unnoticed. Lieutenant Elena Cruz arrived just before dawn, the ocean mist still clinging to her jacket. She'd worked homicide in Oakland before transferring to internal investigations, where cases like this went to die quietly. Prison deaths were supposed to be simple: heart attack, suicide, inmate violence. But this one already felt wrong. Hale's hands were folded across his chest. His eyes were open. "That's not how they leave them," Cruz muttered, crouching beside the body. A guard shifted uncomfortably. "Inmates don't die neatly," she said. "Especially not here." Pelican Bay Secure Housing Unit, known simply as the SHU, was a concrete tomb. 23 hours a day in a windowless cell. No human contact. No programs. No mercy. The men housed here weren't just violent. They were uncontrollable. Gang leaders. Serial killers. Enforcers who ordered murders with a look. Marcus Hale had been one of them. On paper, Hale was a monster. Former hitman for a Northern California prison gang. Linked to at least 6 murders inside and outside prison walls. Witnesses vanished around him. Informants recanted. Guards learned his name early and learned to fear it. But as Cruz examined the scene, something didn't fit. There were no ligature marks, no visible wounds, no signs of self-harm. The medical examiner would later list the cause of death as undetermined pending investigation, a phrase that made wardens nervous and politicians angry. By sunrise, rumors were spreading through the prison like a virus. Some inmates said Hale had been talking to someone important. Others claimed he'd been marked for death weeks ago, not by gangs, but by the system itself. In the SHU, information was currency, and Hale had been spending it recklessly. Cruz requested Hale's recent movement logs. They were clean, too clean. No visits, no calls, no disciplinary write-ups in over a month. For a man with Hale's reputation, that was unheard of. Who benefits from a quiet inmate? Cruz asked the warden. The warden didn't answer. Instead, Cruz turned her attention to the last person known to have interacted with Hale, Correctional Officer Daniel Reese. Mid-30s, clean record, recently transferred from San Quentin. He'd done the late-night tear check less than an hour before Hale was found dead. Reese insisted everything was normal. Hale was alive, breathing, standing at the back of his cell like always. "Did he say anything to you?" Cruz asked. Reese hesitated, just long enough to notice. He asked for a grievance form, Reese said. Said he needed to put something on record. "What kind of something?" Reese swallowed. He didn't say. Cruz requested the grievance log. Hale's name wasn't there. By mid-morning, the story was already being buried. The warden pushed for a swift ruling. Natural causes. Case closed. Another dangerous man removed from circulation. But Cruz wasn't convinced. She pulled Hale's confidential file, sealed, restricted, red-tabbed. Inside were years of intelligence reports, informant notes, and behavioral assessments. Near the back, she found something new. A handwritten note added just 3 weeks earlier. Inmate claims knowledge of staff-assisted contraband operations. Request protection in exchange for cooperation. Cruz felt a chill crawl up her spine. Staff-assisted. Not inmates. Not gangs. Guards. Hale hadn't been planning an escape. He'd been preparing to talk. As Cruz stood to leave the records room, an alarm blared through the prison. Not a riot alarm, not a medical call, a lockdown. An officer burst through the door, face pale. "Lieutenant, you need to see this. Now." They led her to a storage corridor beneath the SHU, a place most staff never entered. The air was damp. The lights flickered. At the end of the hall was a steel door that wasn't supposed to exist, unmarked, sealed, hidden behind shelves of unused restraints. The door was unlocked. Inside, they found a second cell, and on the concrete wall, carved deep into the surface, were 3 words that stopped Cruz cold. He was next. The system that eats its own. The lockdown stretched on for hours, long enough for fear to settle into the bones of Pelican Bay. Inmates pounded on steel doors. Guards barked orders that echoed and died in the concrete corridors. Somewhere deep inside the prison, a truth was trying to claw its way out. Lieutenant Elena Cruz stood inside the hidden cell again, staring at the carved words on the wall. He was next. The message wasn't old. The concrete dust was still fresh, pale against the gray. Whoever carved it had done so recently, and with purpose. This wasn't the work of a desperate inmate losing his mind. It was a warning. "Who's he?" Cruz asked quietly. No one answered. The corridor outside buzzed with nervous energy. Supervisors whispered. Radios crackled with half-sentences and static. The warden wanted the room sealed, photographed, and forgotten. Cruz refused. "This room doesn't exist on any blueprint," she said. "Someone built it. Someone used it." That someone had keys. When Cruz ordered a full inventory of access logs, resistance came immediately. Delays, missing timestamps, technical errors. The kind of excuses she'd heard before, back when she investigated corrupt homicide units on the outside. Power didn't like being questioned, especially behind walls designed to keep the public blind. By evening, Cruz had a list of names. Officers with access to the SHU basement. One of them stood out. Daniel Reese. Reese's transfer from San Quentin suddenly felt less routine. His personnel file showed glowing reviews, but Cruz noticed something else. Commendations clustered tightly around violent incidents. Situations where inmates died or were permanently silenced. Each time, Reese was present. Never accused. Never questioned. Cruz requested to speak with him again. They met in an interview room that smelled faintly of bleach and old coffee. Reese sat stiff, hands clasped, eyes fixed on the table. Marcus Hale asked for a grievance form, Cruz said evenly, but it was never logged. "Why?" Reese looked up, jaw tight. "Things get lost." "In the most secure prison unit in California." Silence. Cruz leaned forward. Hale believed staff were helping move contraband. Phones. Drugs. Messages. He believed he had proof. Reese's fingers twitched. He was going to name names, Cruz continued, and then he died in a locked cell. Reese exhaled slowly. "You think I killed him?" "I think you know who did," Cruz replied. For a moment, Cruz thought he might break. His eyes flicked to the camera in the corner, then back to her. "You don't understand how this place works," Reese said quietly. "Some men can't be controlled. They poison everything. The gangs, the guards, even the system. Hale wasn't a snitch. He was a bomb. And bombs are disarmed," Cruz said, "not erased." Reese's chair scraped loudly as he stood. "I'm done here." He walked out before she could stop him. That night, Cruz reviewed surveillance footage herself, frame by frame. T checks, door logs, shadowed corners where cameras didn't quite reach. At 2:41 a.m., she saw it, a maintenance cart moving through the SHU corridor. Unscheduled, unlogged. Pushing it was an officer in standard gear, his face obscured by the camera angle. But his gait was familiar. Cruz froze the image and cross-referenced shift records. Daniel Reese wasn't scheduled to be there. As she compiled her report, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Stop digging, or you'll end up like him." Cruz didn't respond. She forwarded the message to Internal Affairs and backed it up to a secure drive she kept hidden in her car. Years on the job had taught her one rule. When the system starts threatening you, you're close to something real. The next morning, everything unraveled. Officer Daniel Reese didn't report for duty. His car was found abandoned near the coastal highway, doors open, engine cold. No blood, no signs of a struggle. Inside the trunk, investigators found his service radio, smashed beyond repair, and a folded piece of paper. It was a grievance form. Marcus Hale's name was written at the top. The prison went into emergency mode. Media helicopters circled. Officials scrambled to control the narrative. A missing officer was easier to explain than a murdered inmate who'd threatened to expose corruption. Cruz wasn't buying it. She tracked down the only other inmate Hale had spoken to regularly, an aging lifer named Raymond Klein, housed 2 tiers away. Klein was frail, nearly forgotten, but his eyes were sharp when Cruz sat across from him in the interview booth. Hale knew he was dead, Klein said calmly. He just didn't know when. Who was he afraid of? Cruz asked. Klein smiled thinly. Not who. What? He leaned closer to the glass. There's a list. Names of inmates who disappeared quietly. Men too dangerous, too informed, too inconvenient. They call it containment, but it's execution without witnesses. Cruz felt her pulse quicken. Where's the list? Klein's smile faded. Hale had it. That evening, as Cruz prepared to leave the prison, alarms blared again. Short, sharp, urgent. Not from the SHU, from the evidence room. By the time she arrived, the door was ajar. The lights flickered. Inside, files were strewn across the floor, cabinets ripped open. Hale's file was gone. The backup drive Cruz had logged hours earlier had vanished too. On the wall, written in black marker, was a single sentence. You were warned. Cruz stepped back, heart pounding, as a realization hit her. This wasn't about one dead inmate. This was about a system designed to erase its worst problems and anyone who tried to expose it. And now, she wasn't just investigating the case. She was part of it. The prison that never lets go. By the time dawn broke over the Pacific, Lieutenant Elena Cruz understood one brutal truth. Pelican Bay didn't need bars to trap you. Once you knew how it really worked, the walls followed you everywhere. Internal affairs moved fast, but not in the way Cruz had hoped. Her access was limited. Her badge stopped opening certain doors. Meetings happened without her. The official story was already forming. Marcus Hale died of natural causes. Officer Daniel Reese had suffered a mental break and gone AWOL. Unrelated incidents. Tragic, but separate. Cruz knew better. She returned to the hidden cell one last time before it was sealed. The carved warning, he was next, had been scrubbed away, but faint grooves still scarred the wall. Someone wanted this place erased, yet they'd missed something. Behind a loose ventilation grate, Cruz found a thin plastic sleeve. Inside it was a memory card, no larger than a fingernail. Hale's insurance. She didn't take it to the prison servers. She drove it straight to an off-site forensic lab run by an old contact from her Oakland days. While the data uploaded, Cruz watched the progress bar crawl forward, every second feeling stolen. The files were worse than she imagined. Audio recordings, grainy video clips, names, dates, cell numbers, inmates transferred to isolation and never seen again, medical emergencies that followed unscheduled checks, maintenance carts used as cover, officers rotating roles to avoid patterns, and a title on one document that made her stomach drop. Continue containment program, shoe black file. Marcus Hale hadn't been a monster trying to escape justice. He'd been a witness trying to survive it. The final file was a video. Hale sat on his bunk, face gaunt, eyes burning with urgency. If you're seeing this, Hale said, voice steady despite the fear beneath it, they already killed me, or they're about to. This place isn't about punishment anymore. It's about silence. They pick us because no one listens when we die. The screen cut to black. Cruz forwarded encrypted copies to 3 places at once, a federal oversight office, an investigative journalist she trusted, and a cloud server outside U.S. jurisdiction. Then she waited. The response was immediate and vicious. 2 hours later, Cruz was pulled off the case pending review. Her gun was confiscated. Her badge was deactivated. A supervisor she'd never seen before warned her, gently, to go home and forget everything. She didn't. That night, her apartment door was ajar when she returned. Nothing was stolen, Nothing was broken, but on her kitchen table sat a single object, a prison grievance form. Blank. Crews slept with the lights on. Within 48 hours, the story broke anyway. A major European outlet published an expose detailing secret containment practices inside California's most secure prisons. The article cited anonymous sources, leaked documents, and an unnamed inmate whose final testimony painted a picture of sanctioned disappearances. The public reaction was explosive. Officials denied everything. An emergency task force was announced. A thorough investigation promised. Cameras flooded Pelican Bay's entrance for the first time in years. Families of inmates demanded answers they'd been denied for decades. And then, quietly, Daniel Reese's body was found. He was pulled from the ocean near the same stretch of highway where his car had been abandoned. The coroner ruled it an accidental drowning. No signs of restraint. No evidence of foul play. Crews stared at the report in disbelief. Reese had known too much. Tried to walk away. Or maybe tried to talk. Either way, the system had swallowed him whole. Weeks passed. Arrests were rumored but never confirmed. Evidence went missing. Witnesses were transferred. Some recanted. Others were placed into deeper isolation for their own safety. The task force quietly disbanded. Pelican Bay returned to normal, but Cruz didn't. She resigned from the department and vanished from public life. No interviews. No press conferences. Only one final act before she disappeared. She mailed a package. Inside were copies of Hale's files, Reese's shift logs, and a handwritten note. They think the danger ends when the cell door closes. It doesn't. It just learns how to hide. 3 months later, a man named Anthony Vega died in another maximum security facility. Another lifer. Another irreversibly violent offender. Another locked cell. Another unexplained death. The similarities were impossible to ignore. The case was closed in less than a week. Somewhere deep inside California's prison system, the lights stayed on. The cots kept rolling. The paperwork stayed clean. And the men labeled too dangerous for normal prisons kept disappearing. Quietly, efficiently, legally. They said the worst of the worst were finally contained. But the truth was far more disturbing. The most dangerous thing in California's prisons wasn't the inmates. It was a system watching them die. And if you think the story ends here, if you think this was the last name, the last cell, the last warning, you're not ready for what comes next. So stay close, because the walls are still standing.